You've probably done it without even realizing it. You've posted about your anxiety like it's a personality trait. You've introduced yourself as the one who's been through hell. You've scrolled past dozens of Instagram quotes that say things like, "Your trauma is your superpower," and felt a strange mix of comfort and confusion. Because on one hand, it feels validating. Finally, someone gets your pain. But on the other, you start to wonder, what if I heal? Will I disappear? That's the silent question at the heart of a growing cultural phenomenon, one that's exploded across TikTok, Instagram, and therapy-adjacent online spaces. It's called wounded healer culture. And while it claims to empower trauma survivors, it's quietly trapping millions in a cycle where healing feels like betrayal and peace feels like loss. This isn't just about social media trends. This is about identity, about neuroscience, about how our brains latch on to stories to survive, and how, in the age of viral vulnerability, we've started mistaking our wounds for our worth. Let's be clear from the start. Your pain is real, your trauma matters, and you deserve to be heard. But here's what no influencer, coach, or viral therapist will tell you. Trauma is not your identity. It's an event that happened to you. And the moment you confuse the two, you hand your future over to your past. In recent years, trauma has gone from a clinical term to a cultural currency. Google searches for trauma have more than tripled since 2018. On TikTok, the hashtag trauma has over 42 billion views. And phrases like trauma response, nervous system regulation, and inner child work are now part of everyday conversation, even among people who've never seen a therapist. And while this awareness has helped reduce stigma, which is good, it's also opened the door to something dangerous, the romanticization of suffering. We now live in an era where being triggered is seen as a sign of depth. Chronic anxiety is labeled as high sensitivity. Emotional instability is rebranded as spiritual awakening. And the most followed mental health accounts aren't run by licensed clinicians, but by people whose main qualification is, "I've suffered a lot." This isn't healing. This is pain repackaged as content. And it's creating a generation that confuses being wounded with being wise. The truth is, Carl Jung, the psychologist who originally coined the term wounded healer, never meant for trauma to become a permanent identity. He believed that a healer must have faced their own darkness in order to move beyond it, not to dwell in it forever. But today, the phrase has been stripped of its context and turned into a marketing slogan. "I'm broken, therefore I'm qualified to fix you." And that's where the danger lies. When your sense of self becomes fused with your trauma, when you start saying, "I am traumatized," instead of "I experienced trauma," your brain begins to treat healing as a threat. Why? Because identity is survival. Your nervous system clings to whatever story makes you feel coherent, even if that story keeps you in pain. Neuroscience shows us that the brain prioritizes consistency over truth. If you've spent years defining yourself as the anxious one or the survivor, your brain will resist evidence that contradicts that, even positive change. That's why so many people unconsciously sabotage their own healing. Feeling better starts to feel like losing who they are. And social media makes this worse. Algorithms reward emotional intensity. The more raw, dramatic, or relatable your pain post is, the more it spreads. So your brain learns a toxic equation. Pain equals attention equals safety equals identity. You start trauma dumping, not as a one-time share with a trusted friend, but as a recurring performance in group chats, comment sections, and viral videos. And every time you do, you're not processing the memory, you're reactivating the stress response in your amygdala, reinforcing the neural pathways of fear and helplessness. Psychologists call this trauma reenactment, and it's the opposite of healing. True healing requires integration, not repetition. It requires a safe container like therapy or deep friendship, not a public stage. As Dr. Gabor Mate puts it, trauma is not what happens to you. Trauma is what happens inside you as a result of what happens to you. And that inner process cannot happen under the gaze of thousands. Worse still, wounded healer culture blurs the line between support and exploitation. People launch coaching businesses, sell digital journals, and host paid retreats, often without formal training, based solely on their trauma history. And while lived experience has value, it's not the same as clinical competence. You wouldn't let someone who survived a car crash perform surgery on you. Yet we're letting untrained healers guide others through the most fragile parts of their psyche. And let's talk about the other side of this coin, toxic positivity. Most people think toxic positivity, just be happy, and trauma romanticization, your pain is your purpose, are opposites. But they're actually two escape routes from the same truth, that healing is messy, slow, and deeply personal. Toxic positivity denies pain. Trauma romanticization worships it. But real healing lives in the middle, where you can say, this broke me. I'm still learning to piece myself back together, and that's okay. You don't have to choose between pretending you're fine and making your pain your whole personality. There's a third way. Honest, quiet, unglamorous healing. The kind that happens in therapy offices, journal pages, and 3 a.m. conversations with a trusted friend. The kind that doesn't get likes, but gives you your life back. So how do you break free from wounded healer culture without abandoning your truth? First, change your language. Stop saying, I am traumatized. Start saying, I experienced trauma. Language isn't just words, it's neural programming. Every time you say, I am anxious, you reinforce identity fusion. But I feel anxious right now leaves room for change. Second, share with purpose, not for validation. Before you post, ask yourself, am I sharing to process, to help others, or to feel seen? If it's the last one, write it in a private journal instead. Let your healing be sacred, not searchable. Third, build real community, not just an audience. Follow accounts that model healthy boundaries, not just raw vulnerability. Seek out licensed therapists, not just trauma influencers. And cultivate 2 to 3 real relationships where you can be messy without performing. Fourth, celebrate healing as much as survival. Post about the small victories, the first time you said no without guilt, the day you slept through the night, the moment you chose joy over rumination. Because healing isn't dramatic, it's daily, and it deserves to be honored. And finally, give yourself permission to be more than your trauma. You're also the person who loves bad reality TV, who cries at dog videos, who's learning to cook pasta without burning it, who's starting to trust that peace is possible. Your trauma is a chapter in your story, but it's not the whole book, and you get to write what comes next. Real strength isn't in staying wounded. It's in daring to heal, even when the world profits from your pain. It's in whispering to yourself, I honor what happened to me, but I refuse to let it be all I am. Because you were never meant to carry your past like a crown. You were meant to walk through it and leave it behind. And your healing, it doesn't need a soundtrack. It doesn't need an audience. It just needs you showing up for yourself, quietly, tenderly, consistently. The world doesn't need more wounded healers. It needs whole humans, people who've known darkness but chose to bring back light. So if you've been using your pain to prove your worth, know this, you were always enough, before the wound, during it, and long after. And the most radical act of self-love isn't sharing your trauma with the world. It's giving yourself permission to heal and to be happy without apology.